The rain hammered against the cracked window pane like angry fists demanding entry. 17-year-old Maya Rodriguez pressed her face to the glass, watching the storm transform the narrow alley behind their tenement into a rushing river of filth and broken dreams. Her breath fogged the window as she counted the hours since her sister's last dose of medicine. 12 hours. The seizures would start again soon. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Behind her, 9-year-old Carmen lay motionless on the thin mattress they shared. Her skin pale as winter moonlight. The fever had broken 2 days ago. But Maya knew it was only temporary relief. Without the medication, Carmen's condition would deteriorate rapidly. The neurological disorder that had plagued her sister since birth was relentless, demanding a constant supply of expensive drugs that their meager resources couldn't sustain. Maya's fingers traced the outline of the crumpled business card in her pocket. Dr. Samuel Hartford. She'd found it 3 weeks ago, dropped carelessly outside the upscale medical clinic downtown. The card stock was thick, expensive, embossed with gold lettering that spoke of wealth and privilege. Everything Maya's world lacked. The plan had formed slowly in her mind, like sediment settling in murky water. She researched Dr. Hartford obsessively at the public library, learning about his prestigious practice, his spotless reputation, his dedication to pediatric neurology. He was exactly the kind of doctor who could help Carmen, and exactly the kind of man who would never look twice at 2 girls from the projects, unless Maya gave him a reason. The storm outside mirrored the tempest in her chest as she made her decision. Carmen stirred restlessly, a soft whimper escaping her lips. That sound alone was enough to steel Maya's resolve. She would do whatever it took. The next morning dawned gray and unforgiving. Maya stood before the cracked mirror in their shared bathroom, applying makeup she'd borrowed from her neighbor Isabella. The foundation couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes or the gauntness in her cheeks, but it would have to do. She'd chosen her best dress, a navy blue piece she'd worn to her high school graduation 6 months ago. It was slightly too big now, her body having shed weight from skipping meals to ensure Carmen had enough to eat. The bus ride to the affluent Riverside district took 47 minutes. Maya counted every stop, every turn, every mile that separated her world from Dr. Hartford's. The neighborhoods transformed gradually, tenements giving way to tree-lined streets, broken sidewalks replaced by manicured lawns. By the time she reached her destination, she felt like an alien visiting another planet. The Hartford Medical Center stood like a marble monument to healing and hope. Its glass facade reflected the morning sun, creating an almost ethereal glow that made Maya squint. She approached the revolving doors with measured steps, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. The lobby was a symphony of understated elegance. Soft classical music drifted from hidden speakers, while patients in expensive clothing sat in leather chairs, reading magazines with glossy covers. Maya felt their eyes on her as she approached the reception desk, her worn shoes silent against the polished marble floor. "I need to see Dr. Hartford," she told the receptionist, a middle-aged woman with perfectly styled silver hair and kind eyes behind designer glasses. "Do you have an appointment, dear?" The woman's voice carried the practiced warmth of someone accustomed to dealing with distressed families. Maya's prepared life felt heavy on her tongue. "It's an emergency. My sister, she needs help." The receptionist studied Maya's face, noting the desperation poorly hidden behind forced composure. Something in the girl's expression must have moved her, because she picked up the phone and spoke in hushed tones to someone on the other end. "Dr. Hartford is with a patient, but I'll see if he can spare a few minutes. Please have a seat." Maya chose a chair near the window, watching the busy street outside while her mind raced through possible scenarios she'd rehearsed this moment countless times. But sitting here in the pristine waiting room, surrounded by the quiet hum of efficient medical care, her plan felt both desperate and naive. 20 minutes passed before a door opened and Dr. Samuel Hartford emerged. Maya recognized him immediately from the photos she'd studied online, though seeing him in person added dimensions no photograph could capture. He was taller than she'd expected, probably in his early 40s, with graying temples that gave him a distinguished air. His white coat was pristine, his movements confident but unhurried. When his eyes met hers across the lobby, she saw intelligence tempered by genuine concern. "Miss Rodriguez?" His voice was deeper than she'd imagined, carrying an authority that came from years of making life and death decisions. Maya stood on unsteady legs, smoothing her dress with nervous hands. "Dr. Hartford, thank you for seeing me." He gestured toward his office, and Maya followed him down a hallway lined with medical certificates and awards. His office was spacious but not ostentatious, filled with medical textbooks and family photographs that spoke of a life well lived. Dr. Hartford settled behind his desk while Maya took the chair across from him, feeling small and out of place. "What can I do for you?" he asked, leaning forward slightly with the focused attention of someone accustomed to listening to difficult stories. Maya had practiced this speech 100 times, but now the words felt clumsy in her mouth. "My sister, Carmen, is 9 years old. She has a neurological condition that requires constant medication. We can't afford her treatment anymore." Dr. Hartford's expression remained professionally neutral, but Maya caught the slight tightening around his eyes. "What's her specific diagnosis?" "Juvenile myoclonic epilepsy with developmental delays." The medical terms felt foreign on Maya's tongue, learned through countless hours of internet research and consultations with overworked clinic doctors. "That's a serious condition. What medications is she currently taking?" Maya rattled off the list she'd memorized, watching Dr. Hartford's face for any sign of recognition or hope. He nodded thoughtfully, making notes on a pad of paper. "These are expensive medications," he said finally. "Have you looked into assistance programs, Medicaid?" "We've tried everything." Maya's voice cracked slightly. "We don't qualify for most programs because I work part-time, but I don't make enough to actually afford her medication. We're stuck in the middle, too poor to pay but not poor enough for help." Dr. Hartford was quiet for a long moment, studying Maya's face with an intensity that made her squirm. She could see him processing her story, weighing her words against his experience with desperate families. "Miss Rodriguez," he said carefully, "I specialize in pediatric neurology, but I'm not a charity organization. My services require payment, and insurance authorization for complex cases like your sister's can take weeks or months." This was the moment Maya had been dreading and preparing for an equal measure. She took a deep breath, feeling as though she was about to jump off a cliff with no guarantee of landing safely. "I understand that," she said, meeting his gaze directly. "That's why I'm prepared to offer you something else in exchange for treating Carmen." Dr. Hartford's eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm not sure I understand." Maya's hands trembled as she reached into her purse and pulled out a piece of paper. It was a contract she'd printed at the library, crude and probably legally meaningless, but it represented her desperate attempt to formalize what she was about to propose. "I'll work for you," she said, sliding the paper across his desk. "Cleaning, filing, whatever you need. I'll work without pay for as long as it takes to cover Carmen's treatment costs." Dr. Hartford glanced at the paper but didn't pick it up. "Miss Rodriguez, that's not how medical practices operate. We have professional cleaning services, certified medical assistants, proper employment procedures. Then I'll pay you another way." The words came out in a rush, propelled by desperation and the image of Carmen's pale face. I'll do whatever you want, whatever you need. Just please help my sister." The silence that followed was deafening. Maya watched Dr. Hartford's face, trying to read his expression as he processed her offer. She felt heat rise in her cheeks, acutely aware of how her proposition might sound. But she pushed forward anyway. "I know how this looks," she continued, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "But I'm not asking for charity. I'm offering a trade. My time, my effort, myself, in exchange for Carmen's life." Dr. Hartford leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Maya held her breath, waiting for him to either call security or laugh at her naive proposal. Instead, he asked a question that surprised her. "How long has Carmen been without her medication?" 3 days, Maya admitted. "I've been stretching the doses, giving her half of what she needs." But we ran out completely yesterday morning. And you came here instead of taking her to the emergency room. Maya's laugh was bitter. The air will stabilize her and send us home with a prescription we can't fill. We've been through this cycle a dozen times. Each time, Carmen gets a little worse, recovers a little less completely. Dr. Hartford stood and walked to the window. Gazing out at the busy street below, Maya watched his profile, trying to gauge his thoughts when he turned back to her. His expression had shifted to something she couldn't quite identify. Miss Rodriguez, what you're suggesting is highly irregular and potentially problematic from both ethical and legal standpoints. Maya's heart sank, but she forced herself to remain composed. I understand. I'm sorry for wasting your time. She started to rise from her chair, but Dr. Hartford held up her hand. I didn't say no, he said quietly. I said it was problematic. There's a difference. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya sank back into the chair, hardly daring to hope. If I were to help your sister, Dr. Hartford continued, it would need to be done properly. Full medical evaluation, comprehensive treatment plan, regular monitoring. This isn't something that can be done halfway. I understand, and your offer of compensation would need to be restructured into something legitimate. I won't exploit a desperate young woman, regardless of her willingness. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Does that mean you'll help her? Dr. Hartford returned to his desk and picked up the crude contract Maya had drafted. He read it carefully, his expression thoughtful. This document is legally worthless, he said. Finally, but the sentiment behind it is clear. You're willing to sacrifice everything for your sister's well-being. Yes, Maya whispered. Then let's discuss how we can make this work properly. Dr. Hartford pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began writing. First, I want to examine Carmen immediately. Can you bring her in this afternoon? Maya nodded eagerly. Yes, absolutely. Second, we'll need to establish a legitimate employment arrangement. My practice could use an additional administrative assistant, someone to help with filing, appointment scheduling, basic clerical work. The position would include health insurance benefits that would cover Carmen's treatment. Maya stared at him, hardly believing what she was hearing. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity to earn your sister's treatment through honest work, Dr. Hartford corrected. The salary won't be substantial, but combined with the insurance benefits and a payment plan for any uncovered expenses, it should be sufficient to ensure Carmen receives proper care. Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks before she could stop them. I don't know what to say. Say you'll bring Carmen in today so we can get started. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her carefully applied makeup. Dr. Hartford, why are you doing this? You don't know us. We're nobody special. Dr. Hartford was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. My younger brother had epilepsy, he said finally. He died when I was 16 because my family couldn't afford consistent treatment. I became a doctor to prevent other families from going through what mine did. The weight of his words settled between them like a bridge spanning to different worlds. Maya understood then that her desperate gambit had found its mark, not because of her willingness to sacrifice herself, but because it had awakened something in Dr. Hartford that resonated with his own loss. I'll bring Carmen this afternoon, Maya promised, and Dr. Hartford, thank you for seeing past what I was offering to what I was really asking for. He nodded, already reaching for his appointment book. Let's focus on getting your sister the help she needs. Everything else we'll figure out as we go. As Maya left the medical center that morning, the gray sky seemed somehow brighter. The bus ride home passed in a blur of planning and hope. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe that Carmen might have a future beyond the cycle of seizures and expensive medications they couldn't afford. When she arrived at their small apartment, Carmen was awake, sitting by the window with one of her few remaining toys, a stuffed elephant with a missing eye that Maya had found at a thrift shop years ago. Maya? Carmen's voice was weak but alert. Where did you go? Maya knelt beside her sister, smoothing the tangled hair from her forehead. I went to find us some help, Mija. We're going to see a doctor this afternoon. A really good doctor who's going to make you feel better. Carmen's eyes, so much older than her 9 years, searched Maya's face. Did you do something bad to get the money? The question pierced Maya's heart with its innocent wisdom. Carmen had always been too perceptive, too aware of their struggles. No, baby, Maya said, pulling her sister close. I did something good. I found someone who wants to help us, as she held Carmen's fragile form against her chest. Maya thought about Dr. Hartford's words, about his brother, about the unexpected kindness that had emerged from her desperate proposal. She'd walked into that office prepared to sacrifice everything, and instead had found something she'd never dared hope for. A future where Carmen could simply be a child, free from the shadow of illness and financial desperation. The afternoon couldn't come soon enough. The Hartford Medical Center felt different when Maya returned that afternoon with Carmen in tow. The marble floors that had seemed intimidating that morning now represented possibility, rather than exclusion. Carmen's small hand gripped Maya's tightly as they approached the reception desk, her wide eyes taking in the opulent surroundings. With a mixture of wonder and apprehension, "We're here to see Dr. Hartford," Maya told the silver-haired receptionist, whose nameplate read Margaret Williamson. Margaret's face brightened with recognition. "Of course, dear. Dr. Hartford is expecting you both." She leaned forward slightly, addressing Carmen directly. "And you must be the young lady we're going to take excellent care of." Carmen pressed closer to Maya's side, overwhelmed by the attention and unfamiliar environment. She'd spent most of her life in overcrowded clinic waiting rooms where harried staff barely acknowledged patients. Beyond checking them in, the personalized attention felt foreign and slightly frightening. Dr. Hartford appeared within minutes, moving with the same unhurried confidence Maya had witnessed earlier. When his gaze fell on Carmen, his expression softened in a way that spoke of genuine concern rather than professional obligation. "Hello, Carmen," he said, crouching down to her eye level. "I'm Dr. Hartford. Your sister Maya told me you haven't been feeling well lately." Carmen nodded shyly, clutching her worn stuffed elephant against her chest. The toy looked even more shabby in the pristine medical environment, its missing eye and frayed fabric a stark reminder of their economic circumstances. "That's a wonderful elephant," Dr. Hartford observed. "What's his name?" "Eduardo," Carmen whispered, the first word she'd spoken since entering the building. "Eduardo is welcome to come with us while we do your examination. I bet he's been taking good care of you." The simple acknowledgement of her beloved toy did more to put Carmen at ease than any amount of medical reassurance could have accomplished. Maya watched the interaction with growing amazement, recognizing Dr. Hartford's instinctive understanding of how to communicate with frightened children. They followed him down the hallway to an examination room that was nothing like the sterile, intimidating spaces Carmen had grown accustomed to. Colorful murals decorated the walls, depicting friendly animals engaged in various activities. Soft toys occupied a corner shelf, and child-sized furniture made the space feel welcoming rather than clinical. "I'd like to do a comprehensive evaluation," Dr. Hartford explained to Maya while Carmen explored the room with cautious curiosity. Physical examination, neurological assessment, review of her medical history, and some basic tests to establish a current baseline. Maya pulled out a manila folder thick with medical records, insurance denials, and prescription receipts. "I brought everything I could find." Dr. Hartford accepted the folder with both hands, as if recognizing the weight of the documentation beyond its physical mass. "This will be very helpful. I can see you've been meticulous about tracking her condition." The examination began gently, with Dr. Hartford explaining each step to Carmen in terms she could understand. He checked her reflexes, listened to her heart and lungs, and asked questions about her symptoms in language that respected her intelligence without overwhelming her with medical terminology. "Carmen, when you have the shaking episodes, do they feel like they come from inside your head, or do they start somewhere else in your body?" he asked, demonstrating different types of movements with his hands. "Inside my head," Carmen replied, touching her temple, "like there's a thunderstorm up there, and I can't make it stop." Dr. Hartford nodded thoughtfully, making notes on his tablet. "That's a very good way to describe it. And after the thunderstorm passes, how do you feel?" "Tired. Really, really tired. And sometimes I can't remember things for a while." Maya watched this exchange with growing emotion. No doctor had ever taken the time to understand Carmen's experience from her own perspective. They'd focused on symptoms and medications, treating the condition rather than the child who lived with it. The neurological assessment was more complex, involving tests of Carmen's coordination, memory, and cognitive function. Dr. Hartford made it feel like a series of games rather than medical procedures, encouraging Carmen to follow his finger with her eyes, repeat sequences of numbers, and perform simple tasks that revealed the subtle ways her condition affected her daily functioning. Maya, Dr. Hartford said during a moment when Carmen was occupied with a puzzle designed to test fine motor skills, I'm seeing some concerning patterns here. Carmen's condition appears to be more advanced than what's indicated in her previous medical records. Maya's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means the sporadic treatment she's been receiving isn't sufficient. Her neurological function is declining faster than it should. With proper medication management, we need to be aggressive about getting her stabilized. The weight of months of impossible choices crashed down on Maya's shoulders. Every half dose of medication, every skipped treatment, every compromise forced by their financial constraints had contributed to Carmen's deterioration. The guilt was almost suffocating. Is it reversible? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Some of it, yes, with consistent treatment and proper monitoring. We can likely prevent further decline and potentially improve some of her cognitive function. But Maya, this needs to happen now. We can't afford to wait weeks for insurance approvals or bureaucratic processes. Dr. Hartford's urgency was evident despite his calm demeanor. Maya realized this was exactly what she'd feared, that by the time they found help, it might be too late to make a meaningful difference. I understand, Maya said. What do we need to do? First, I'm going to prescribe an immediate course of medication to stabilize her current condition. I'll cover the cost personally and we'll sort out the reimbursement later. Through your insurance benefits. Maya stared at him in disbelief. You would do that? Carmen's health can't wait for paperwork. Dr. Hartford replied simply. Second, I want to schedule her for an MRI and some additional neurological testing. We need a complete picture of what we're dealing with. He turned to address Carmen directly. Carmen, how would you feel about coming to visit me regularly? Maybe twice a week to start, so we can make sure the new medicine is working properly. Carmen looked up from her puzzle, considering the question with the seriousness of someone much older. Will it make the thunderstorms stop? That's exactly what we're hoping for, Dr. Hartford assured her. It might take a little time, but I think we can make them much smaller and less frightening. And Maya won't have to be scared anymore. The question pierced both adults with its insight. Carmen had been acutely aware of the burden her condition placed on her sister, despite Maya's efforts to shield her from that knowledge. That's right, Dr. Hartford said gently. Maya won't have to worry so much about taking care of you, because I'll be helping too. After the examination, Dr. Hartford led them to his office to discuss the practical details of Carmen's treatment plan. Maya found herself in the surreal position of negotiating her employment, while her sister colored at a small table Dr. Hartford had thoughtfully provided. The administrative assistant position is legitimate, he assured her, pulling out official employment documents. You'll work 25 hours per week, with flexible scheduling to accommodate Carmen's appointments and your need to be with her during treatments. Maya scanned the job description, hardly believing the salary figure listed. It wasn't generous by middle-class standards, but it represented a more stable income than she'd ever had. The health insurance benefits begin immediately, Dr. Hartford continued. Emergency coverage, so Carmen can start her new medication regimen tonight. I'll call in prescriptions to the pharmacy downstairs before you leave. Dr. Hartford, Maya began, struggling to find adequate words. This is more than I ever hoped for. I don't know how to thank you. You can thank me by taking excellent care of your sister and by taking this job seriously. I'm not offering charity. Maya, I'm offering you an opportunity to build a stable life for both of you. But it will require hard work and commitment. Maya nodded eagerly. I understand. When do I start? Monday morning, 8 o'clock. Margaret will train you on our systems and procedures. You'll primarily be handling appointment scheduling, patient file management, and insurance communications tasks that require attention to detail and discretion. The weight of responsibility settled on Maya's shoulders, but for the first time in years, it felt manageable rather than crushing. She would be earning Carmen's medical care through honest work, contributing something valuable rather than simply accepting charity. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Hartford handed Maya a business card different from the one she'd found weeks ago. This one had her name printed below his, Maya Rodriguez, administrative assistant. "I had these printed this afternoon," he explained. "You're officially part of the Hartford Medical Center team." Maya stared at the card, running her thumb over the raised lettering of her own name. It represented more than employment. It was proof of belonging, of having a legitimate place in a world that had previously excluded her. Carmen tugged on Maya's sleeve, holding up the drawing she'd completed during their conversation. It depicted 3 stick figures standing together, 2 tall ones and 1 short one, with a large building in the background. Above them, she'd drawn a sun breaking through dark clouds. "That's us," Carmen explained, pointing to each figure. "You, me, and Dr. Hartford. And look, the storm is going away." Dr. Hartford accepted the drawing with the solemnity of someone receiving a precious gift. "May I keep this for my office? I think it would look perfect on my wall." Carmen beamed with pride, nodding enthusiastically. Maya watched this interaction with a growing sense of wonder. In the space of a single afternoon, Carmen had gone from being a burden they couldn't afford to treat to being a valued patient whose artwork was worthy of display. The pharmacy visit was another revelation. Instead of the familiar anxiety of hoping their limited funds would cover necessary medications, Maya simply presented the insurance card Dr. Hartford had provided. The pharmacist, recognizing Dr. Hartford's name on the prescription, treated them with professional courtesy rather than the barely concealed impatience they'd grown accustomed to. "This is a significant medication regimen," the pharmacist explained, reviewing the prescriptions. "Dr. Hartford wants to see Carmen back in 48 hours to monitor her response. It's important to follow the dosing schedule exactly. No skipping doses, no adjustments without his approval." Maya nodded, clutching the bag of medications like a lifeline. For the first time in months, she knew Carmen would receive every dose she needed, on schedule, without compromise. The bus ride home passed in comfortable silence. Carmen dozed against Maya's shoulder, exhausted by the afternoon's activities, but more peaceful than she'd been in weeks. Maya spent the journey processing the day's events, trying to reconcile their new reality with the desperate circumstances that had driven her to Dr. Hartford's office that morning. Their apartment looked shabbier than ever when they returned, but it no longer felt like a trap. The peeling paint and cramped quarters were temporary now, stepping stones toward something better rather than permanent features of their existence. Maya administered Carmen's first dose of the new medication with careful precision, reading the instructions 3 times to ensure accuracy. Carmen swallowed the pills without complaint, trusting in Maya's assurance that these would help more than anything they'd tried before. "Maya," Carmen said as they prepared for bed that night, "is Dr. Hartford going to be like family now?" The question caught Maya off guard with its innocence and insight. "What makes you ask that?" "He looked at us the way families are supposed to look at each other. Not like we were bothering him or taking up his time." Maya considered this observation, recognizing the truth in Carmen's childlike wisdom. Dr. Hartford had indeed looked at them with something approaching familial concern. Not the distant professionalism they'd encountered elsewhere, but genuine investment in their well-being. "I think he wants to help us become the best versions of ourselves," Maya said carefully. "Like good families do." Carmen nodded sagely, apparently satisfied with this explanation. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya sat by the window watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, learning her job responsibilities, managing Carmen's treatment schedule, adapting to their changed circumstances. But for the first time in years, she looked forward to the future rather than simply dreading the next crisis. The storm that had brought her to Dr. Hartford's office seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by the steady promise of stability and hope. Monday morning arrived with the crisp promise of autumn, and Maya stood before the Hartford Medical Center at 7:45, clutching a thermos of coffee and fighting butterflies in her stomach. She'd spent the weekend practicing professional phrases in the mirror and researching medical terminology online, determined to prove herself worthy of Dr. Hartford's unexpected faith in her abilities. Margaret Williamson greeted her with warm efficiency, leading her to a desk position strategically near the reception area, but with clear sightlines to Dr. Hartford's office. The workspace was modest but well-equipped, featuring a computer system that looked more advanced than anything Maya had encountered during her brief stint at a fast food restaurant the previous year. The learning curve is steep but manageable, Margaret explained, settling into the chair beside Maya's desk. Dr. Hartford values accuracy over speed, so don't worry about being perfect immediately. He'd rather you ask questions than make assumptions. This is actually a good sign, he explained to Maya as Carmen's dizziness began to subside. It means her body is responding well enough to the medication that we can optimize the levels for maximum benefit with minimal side effects. Maya felt her panic slowly recede, replaced by a deeper understanding of the complexities involved in Carmen's treatment. The path to recovery wouldn't be smooth or predictable, but Dr. Hartford's measured response to the crisis demonstrated the difference between emergency management and comprehensive care. As they prepared to leave that evening, Carmen tugged on Dr. Hartford's white coat. "Are you going to keep taking care of us even when I get better?" The question hung in the air with unexpected weight. Maya realized that she'd been wondering the same thing, but hadn't dared to voice it. Dr. Hartford crouched down to Carmen's level, considering his answer carefully. "Carmen, taking care of people isn't just about medicine. It's about making sure they have what they need to be healthy and happy. I'd like to keep doing that for both you and Maya, if you'd like me to." Carmen nodded solemnly. "I'd like that." Maya gets scared sometimes when she thinks no one is watching. The observation struck Maya with its accuracy. Despite their improved circumstances, she still woke up some nights in a panic, afraid that their new life might disappear as suddenly as it had arrived. Then it settled. Dr. Hartford said, standing and addressing Maya directly, "We're in this together, for as long as you need us to be." Walking home that evening, Maya reflected on the day's events. Mrs. Delgado's visit had forced her to confront the fragility of their new situation, while Carmen's medical episode had reminded her that recovery was an ongoing process rather than a destination. But Dr. Hartford's steady presence through both challenges had begun to feel like something she could rely on, not as a desperate patient seeking charity, but as someone deserving of consistent support and care. The streetlights flickered on as they reached their neighborhood, illuminating the familiar path to their apartment. Maya realized that home was beginning to feel less like a place of last resort and more like a temporary way station on their journey toward something better. 2 months into Maya's employment at the Hartford Medical Center, autumn painted the city in brilliant shades of amber and crimson. The changing season brought with it a transformation in the Rodriguez sisters' lives that extended far beyond Carmen's medical improvements. Maya had discovered an unexpected aptitude for medical administration, her natural organizational skills flourishing under Margaret's patient guidance and Dr. Hartford's encouraging supervision. The morning routine had become a cherished ritual. Maya would arrive at the medical center by 7:30, reviewing the day's appointments while Carmen attended a specialized tutoring program Dr. Hartford had arranged with the local elementary school. The program allowed Carmen to receive individualized instruction that accommodated her neurological needs, while gradually reintegrating her into a structured learning environment. "Maya, could you review these insurance authorizations?" Margaret asked, placing a stack of forms on the desk that had become Maya's domain. "The Brennan family's coverage is being challenged again, and I think your fresh perspective might help identify angles we've missed." Maya accepted the files with the confidence of someone who had mastered complex systems through necessity and determination. Her unofficial specialization had emerged in navigating insurance bureaucracies, a skill born from years of fighting for Carmen's coverage had translated into advocacy for other families facing similar obstacles. The Brennan case was particularly challenging. Their 8-year-old son Marcus suffered from a rare metabolic disorder that required expensive enzyme replacement therapy. The insurance company had denied coverage 3 times, citing the treatment as experimental despite FDA approval and established efficacy data. Maya spread the documents across her desk, constructing a timeline of Marcus's medical history, previous treatments, and documented improvements with the enzyme therapy. She'd learned to think like an insurance adjuster, anticipating objections and preparing counterarguments supported by medical literature and cost-benefit analyses. Dr. Hartford, she called when he emerged from his 10 o'clock appointment. "I think I found a strategy for the Brennan authorization." He approached her desk with the attention he gave to complex medical consultations. Maya had learned to appreciate this aspect of his personality, his ability to focus completely on whatever problem required solving, whether it involved brain chemistry or insurance regulations. "The company keeps rejecting based on cost," Maya explained, pointing to highlighted sections in the denial letters. "But they're not considering the long-term expenses of Marcus's condition without treatment, emergency hospitalizations, intensive care, eventual organ damage. The lifetime costs will far exceed the enzyme therapy." Dr. Hartford studied her analysis, nodding slowly. "You've essentially created a medical economics argument. Have you calculated projected costs based on similar cases and medical literature?" "Yes." Maya pulled out a spreadsheet she'd created using the medical center's computer system. "Conservative estimates show the insurance company will spend 4 times more managing Marcus's untreated condition over the next 5 years. This is sophisticated work, Maya. Where did you learn to construct this type of analysis?" Maya hesitated, uncertain how to explain that desperation had been her teacher. "When Carmen was first diagnosed, I spent months trying to understand why insurance companies made certain decisions. I learned their language out of necessity." Dr. Hartford's expression grew thoughtful. "Would you be interested in expanding this type of work? I've been considering adding a patient advocacy coordinator to our staff, someone who specializes in insurance navigation and treatment access issues." The suggestion caught Maya off guard. In just 2 months, she'd gone from desperate supplicant to valued employee to potentially specialized professional. The trajectory felt almost impossibly rapid. "I'd love to learn more about it," she said carefully, "but I don't have formal training in medical economics or healthcare administration. You have something more valuable: practical experience and genuine investment in patient outcomes. Formal training can be acquired. Passion and intelligence can't be taught." Their conversation was interrupted by Carmen's arrival from her tutoring session. Maya had grown accustomed to the sight of her sister entering the medical center with increasing confidence, but today Carmen seemed subdued, her usual bright energy notably absent. "How was school today, Mija?" Maya asked, noting the way Carmen avoided eye contact. "It was okay," Carmen replied with studied casualness. But Maya detected the tremor in her voice that indicated suppressed emotion. Dr. Hartford, observing the exchange with his characteristic attention to subtle cues, crouched down to Carmen's level. "Carmen, is everything all right? You seem upset about something." Carmen's composure cracked slightly. "Some kids at school were talking about me. They said I was weird because I take special medicine and see a brain doctor." Maya felt familiar. Anger flare in her chest, the protective fury that had sustained her through years of advocating for Carmen in hostile environments. But Dr. Hartford's response demonstrated a different approach that must have felt hurtful. He said simply, "Did you know that some of the smartest, most creative people in history had brains that worked differently from other people's?" Carmen shook her head, curiosity beginning to replace dejection. "There's a famous artist named Vincent van Gogh who painted incredibly beautiful pictures. Many people think he had a neurological condition similar to yours, and a brilliant scientist named Nikola Tesla invented amazing things. But his brain worked in ways that other people didn't always understand." Carmen's eyes widened with interest. "Really? They had thunderstorms in their heads too?" "Something like that. And look what they accomplished because their brains were special, not in spite of it." Maya watched this interaction with growing amazement. Dr. Hartford had transformed Carmen's source of shame into potential pride, reframing her condition as a form of uniqueness rather than deficiency. "Would you like to see some pictures of their work?" Dr. Hartford asked. "I have some art books in my office." that show how differently their brains help them see the world. Carmen nodded eagerly, her earlier distress forgotten in the excitement of discovery. As they headed toward Dr. Hartford's office, Maya marveled at his instinctive understanding of how to nurture Carmen's self-esteem, while acknowledging the reality of her challenges. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor that would test the stability Maya had begun to take for granted. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison from Child Protective Services arrived at the medical center, requesting a private consultation with Dr. Hartford regarding Carmen's case. Maya first learned of the visit when Margaret approached her desk with an expression of carefully controlled concern. "Maya, there's a social worker here asking questions about Carmen's medical treatment and living situation. Dr. Hartford is meeting with her now." The familiar cold grip of panic seized Maya's stomach. She'd dealt with CPS investigations before, during periods when Carmen's untreated seizures had raised questions about possible neglect or abuse. Those encounters had always ended favorably, but they'd taught Maya how quickly her custody of Carmen could be threatened by bureaucratic scrutiny. "Did she say what prompted the visit?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Something about a report questioning the circumstances of Carmen's improved medical care. She mentioned concerns about potential exploitation or inappropriate relationships." Maya's mind raced through possible sources of such a report. Mrs. Delgado's visit had ended positively, but perhaps others in their neighborhood harbored more persistent suspicions about their sudden change in circumstances. An hour passed before Dr. Hartford emerged from his office with Dr. Morrison, a stern-faced woman in her 50s, whose professional demeanor suggested years of investigating difficult family situations. Maya stood as they approached, her hands trembling slightly despite her efforts to appear composed. "Miss Rodriguez," Dr. Morrison said formally, "I'm Dr. Elizabeth Morrison from Child Protective Services. I'd like to speak with you about Carmen's living situation and medical care arrangements." "Of course," Maya replied, gesturing toward the conference room where they could speak privately. Dr. Morrison's questions were thorough and probing, covering everything from Maya's employment arrangements to Carmen's daily routine to the specifics of their living conditions. Maya answered honestly, providing documentation when requested and explaining the legitimate nature of her relationship with Dr. Hartford. "Miss Rodriguez, you're quite young to be solely responsible for a child with significant medical needs," Dr. Morrison observed. "Our report suggests that you may have entered into inappropriate arrangements to secure medical care for Carmen. Dr. Hartford offered me legitimate employment with health insurance benefits," Maya replied firmly. "I work 25 hours per week as an administrative assistant, and Carmen receives appropriate medical care through our insurance coverage." "And prior to this employment, how were you managing Carmen's medical expenses?" Maya's throat tightened as she admitted the truth. "We weren't managing them adequately. Carmen's condition was deteriorating because we couldn't afford consistent treatment." Dr. Morrison made notes on her tablet, her expression revealing nothing about her assessment of Maya's responses. "I'll need to observe Carmen directly and inspect your living environment before completing my evaluation." The prospect of a home visit filled Maya with dread. Their apartment remained shabby and cramped, a stark contrast to the professional environment where she now worked. Would Dr. Morrison understand that material circumstances didn't determine the quality of care and love Carmen received? When Dr. Morrison finally left, promising to schedule the home visit within the week, Maya found herself shaking with suppressed anxiety. Dr. Hartford approached her with gentle concern. "Maya, what can I do to help you prepare for this investigation?" "I don't know," Maya admitted. "Our apartment is nothing like this place. It's going to look like Carmen should be in foster care instead of with me." Dr. Hartford was quiet for a moment, considering options. "Would you be comfortable if I provided a professional reference regarding Carmen's care and your capabilities? As her guardian, you would do that." "Maya, I've observed your devotion to Carmen for months now. No foster care placement could provide better emotional support and advocacy than what you give her. A social worker needs to understand that." His confidence in her abilities felt like a lifeline in turbulent waters. Maya realized that Dr. Hartford's support represented more than professional courtesy. It was the backing of someone whose opinion carried significant weight in medical and social service communities. The remainder of the week passed in a haze of preparation and anxiety. Maya cleaned their apartment obsessively, organized Carmen's medical records, and rehearsed responses to potential questions. Carmen, sensing the tension, became more clingy and subdued, her progress threatened by the stress of potential separation. Dr. Morrison's home visit occurred on a gray Thursday afternoon, when autumn rain painted the tenement building's windows with melancholy streaks. Maya had prepared Carmen for the visit by explaining that a nice lady needed to make sure they were taking good care of each other. The social worker's inspection was thorough, but not unkind. She noted the apartment's limitations while also observing the love and care evident in Carmen's well-organized medical supplies. Her artwork displayed prominently on the refrigerator, and the cozy reading corner Maya had created near the window. "Carmen," Dr. Morrison said gently, "can you tell me about your daily routine? What do you do when you wake up?" Carmen described her morning medication ritual, her tutoring sessions, and her afternoon visits to Dr. Hartford's office with the matter-of-fact confidence of a child whose needs were consistently met. She showed Dr. Morrison her favorite books, her art supplies, and the friendship bracelet she was making for Maya. "Do you feel safe here with Maya?" Dr. Morrison asked. "Maya takes care of me better than anyone," Carmen replied without hesitation. "She makes sure I take my medicine on time, and she reads to me when I'm scared, and she works really hard so we can stay together." The simple honesty in Carmen's voice seemed to complete Dr. Morrison's assessment. When she prepared to leave, her demeanor had shifted from suspicious scrutiny to professional approval. "Miss Rodriguez," she said formally, "I'll be filing a report recommending that Carmen remain in your custody. Your employment situation and Carmen's improved medical status demonstrate that you've successfully addressed the concerns that initially prompted this investigation." Maya felt her knees nearly buckle with relief. "Thank you, Dr. Morrison. I promise Carmen will always be my priority." "I can see that," Dr. Morrison replied, her stern expression softening slightly. "You've done an excellent job under difficult circumstances." That evening, as Maya and Carmen sat together reviewing homework assignments, Carmen looked up from her math worksheet with serious eyes. "Maya, are we going to be okay now? Nobody's going to try to separate us." Maya pulled her sister close, feeling the solid warmth of the person who had given her life meaning and purpose. "We're going to be fine. Mija, we have people who care about us now, and we're building something strong together." Carmen nodded contentedly, returning to her mathematical calculations with the focused attention that her improved neurological function now allowed. Maya watched her work, marveling at the journey that had brought them from desperation to stability in such a short time. Outside, the autumn rain continued its gentle percussion against their windows, but inside their small apartment, warmth and security had taken root and begun to flourish. The first snowfall of winter arrived early that year, blanketing the city in pristine white that transformed even the most mundane streets into scenes of unexpected beauty. Maya stood at the medical center's large windows, watching the flakes drift past with a sense of wonder she hadn't experienced in years. Winter had always meant increased hardship, higher heating bills, more illnesses, fewer job opportunities, but this year, she observed the season's arrival with anticipation rather than dread. Carmen's improvement continued to astound both Maya and Dr. Hartford. The 9-year-old had not experienced a major seizure in 6 weeks, and her cognitive function had rebounded dramatically. Her artwork, displayed throughout Dr. Hartford's office, showed increasing complexity and creativity. More importantly, her laughter had returned, the bright, uninhibited sound of a child discovering joy in ordinary moments. "Maya, could you join me in my office?" Dr. Hartford's voice carried an unusual note of excitement as he approached her desk on a particularly busy Tuesday morning. She followed him past the examination rooms where other young patients waited with their families, noting how natural it felt to be part of this healing environment. The past 4 months had transformed her from desperate supplicant to integral team member, a shift that still occasionally surprised her with its completeness. Dr. Hartford closed his office door and gestured toward the chair across from his. Desk the same chair where she'd sat months ago, prepared to offer everything she had for Carmen's sake. Now she occupied it as a trusted colleague and friend. I've been approached by the Regional Medical Association about presenting our case. At their annual conference, he began, his eyes bright with professional enthusiasm. They want to showcase successful models of integrated patient care and family support. Maya blinked in confusion. Our case, Carmen's treatment and recovery. Your role as both sister and patient advocate. The way we've structured employment to provide health care access. It's exactly the type of innovative approach they want to highlight. The idea of becoming a public example filled Maya with complex emotions. Pride warred with privacy concerns as she imagined strangers dissecting their personal struggles and triumphs. What would that involve? She asked carefully. A presentation about our model, possibly including patient testimony. They're particularly interested in your transition from family caregiver to professional advocate. He leaned forward, his expression growing more personal. Maya, what we've accomplished here isn't just about Carmen's medical improvement. It's about creating sustainable solutions for families facing similar challenges. Maya considered this perspective, recognizing truth in his words. How many other families were struggling with the same impossible choices she'd faced? If their experience could provide a roadmap for others, didn't she have an obligation to share it? Would Carmen need to be involved only if she wanted to be? The focus would be primarily on the administrative and employment innovations we've developed. Before Maya could respond, a soft knock interrupted their conversation. Margaret appeared in the doorway with an apologetic expression. Dr. Hartford, there's a gentleman here asking to speak with Maya. He says he's family. Maya's stomach dropped. She had no family beyond Carmen, a fact that made the stranger's claim immediately suspicious and potentially threatening. Did he give a name? Dr. Hartford asked, noting Maya's obvious distress. Thomas Rodriguez. He says he's Maya's uncle. Maya's world tilted slightly. Thomas Rodriguez was indeed her uncle, her father's younger brother, but she hadn't seen him in over 3 years. His last visit had ended badly when he'd suggested that Carmen would be better off in institutional care, a recommendation that had led to heated words and his abrupt departure from their lives. I'll handle this, Dr. Hartford said firmly. But Maya shook her head. No, I should face him. But would you mind staying nearby? Dr. Hartford nodded, understanding the request for moral support without requiring explanation. Thomas Rodriguez looked older than Maya remembered, his hair more gray than black, his face weathered by whatever circumstances had occupied his past 3 years. He wore a cheap suit that didn't quite fit, and his eyes held the restless quality of someone perpetually uncomfortable with his surroundings. Maya, he said, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes, you look different. Professional, uncle. Thomas. Maya kept her voice neutral, aware that Dr. Hartford and Margaret were within earshot. What brings you here? I heard through the neighborhood that you and Carmen had come into some good fortune. Thought I'd check on my nieces, see how you're managing. Maya recognized the calculated casualness in his tone, the same approach he'd used years ago when suggesting Carmen might be too much responsibility for someone of Maya's age. We're managing very well, she replied evenly. Carmen is receiving excellent medical care, and I have stable employment. Thomas's gaze swept the medical center's expensive surroundings with obvious assessment. This is quite a step up from the free clinic. Must be costing a fortune. Carmen's treatment is covered by my health insurance benefits, and this job just appeared out of nowhere. Thomas's skepticism was thinly veiled. Maya, I've been around long enough to know that opportunities like this don't usually fall into the laps of teenage girls from the projects. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, recognizing the implications behind his questions. Before she could respond, Dr. Hartford appeared beside them with the authoritative presence that had become familiar and comforting. Mr. Rodriguez, I presume. I'm Dr. Samuel Hartford, Carmen's physician and Maya's employer. Thomas straightened, clearly unprepared for direct confrontation with the source of Maya's employment. Doctor, I was just expressing concern about my niece's sudden change in circumstances. Your concern is understandable. Dr. Hartford replied smoothly. Maya has proven to be an exceptional employee, and Carmen's response to treatment has been remarkable. They're both thriving in their current situation, and this arrangement is at all legitimate, above board? Dr. Hartford's expression remained professionally neutral, but Maya detected steel beneath the surface. Mr. Rodriguez, Maya is employed as an administrative assistant with full benefits and documentation. Carmen is my patient under standard medical care protocols. Everything is not only legitimate but exemplary. Thomas appeared to realize he'd overplayed his hand. His questions had revealed more about his own assumptions than any actual concerns about Maya's welfare. I just want what's best for the girls, he said, attempting to salvage dignity from the awkward encounter. Then you'll be pleased to know they're both flourishing, Dr. Hartford replied with finality. After Thomas left, promising to stay in touch with obvious insincerity, Maya found herself shaken by the encounter. Dr. Hartford guided her to his office, where they sat in comfortable silence while she processed the interaction. He was fishing, Maya said finally, looking for some angle he could exploit. What kind of angle? Maya hesitated, embarrassed by her family's dynamics. Thomas has always resented our independence. When Carmen was first diagnosed, he suggested we'd all be better off if she was placed in state care. He couldn't understand why I was determined to keep us together. Dr. Hartford's expression darkened with understanding. He thought Carmen was a burden rather than a blessing. Exactly. And now that we're doing well, he's probably wondering if there's some way he can benefit from our improved circumstances. Maya, you don't owe him anything. You've built this life through your own courage and determination. With your help, Maya added quietly, with mutual benefit, Dr. Hartford corrected. You've become invaluable to this practice, and Carmen brings joy to everyone who meets her. This isn't charity, it's family. The word hung in the air between them, carrying weight. That surprised them both. Maya realized that somewhere during the past months, the three of them had indeed become a family of choice bound not by blood, but by mutual care and commitment. Double quotes Dr. Hartford, Maya said carefully, about the medical conference presentation. I think we should do it. If our story can help other families find solutions, we have an obligation to share it. His smile was brilliant and proud. I was hoping you'd say that. Later that afternoon, Carmen arrived from her tutoring session with news that would further test the bonds they'd been building. She burst into the medical center with unusual excitement, her cheeks flushed from cold and enthusiasm. Maya, Dr. Hartford, guess what happened at school today? They gathered around Carmen as she launched into her story with the dramatic flair of a natural storyteller. Mrs. Patterson announced that our class is going to do a science fair project about the human brain, and she asked if anyone had personal experience with neurological conditions. I raised my hand and told everyone about my epilepsy and how Dr. Hartford helped make the thunderstorms stop. Maya felt pride and concern compete in her chest. Carmen's confidence was wonderful, but she worried about potential negative reactions from classmates or parents. How did everyone respond? Dr. Hartford asked gently. They were super interested. Mrs. Patterson asked if I'd like to do my project about epilepsy and maybe bring in an expert to talk to the class. Carmen turned to Dr. Hartford with hopeful eyes. Could you come speak to my class, please? Dr. Hartford glanced at Maya, recognizing this as another milestone in Carmen's integration into normal childhood experiences. The fact that she wanted to share her condition rather than hide it demonstrated remarkable psychological growth. I'd be honored to speak to your class, he said solemnly. What would you like me to tell them? Everything about how the brain works and why some people have seizures and how medicine can help and how having epilepsy doesn't make you weird or scary. Maya marveled at Carmen's transformation from the frightened, withdrawn child she'd been just months ago. The girl who had once been ashamed of her condition was now eager to educate others about it. We should prepare some age-appropriate materials, Dr. Hartford suggested. Maybe some brain models, simple diagrams, perhaps a demonstration of how neurons communicate. Carmen clapped her hands with delight. Can I help make the presentation? I insist that you help. It's your story to tell, Carmen. I'll just provide the medical background. As they began planning the school presentation, Maya realized how far they'd all traveled from that desperate morning. When she'd first appeared in Dr. Hartford's office, Carmen was no longer just a patient, but a young advocate for neurological awareness. Maya had evolved from desperate caregiver to professional colleague, and Dr. Hartford had become something she'd never expected a father figure who provided not just medical care but emotional support and genuine family connection. The evening brought another surprise when Maya's phone rang with a call from an unknown number. She answered cautiously, still unsettled by Thomas's unexpected visit. "Miss Rodriguez, this is Dr. Jennifer Walsh from Children's Hospital. I understand you've been working on insurance advocacy cases at Hartford Medical Center." Maya confirmed this, wondering where the conversation might lead. "We have a complex case involving a 12-year-old with a rare metabolic condition. His family has been fighting for treatment authorization. For months, Dr. Hartford suggested you might be able to review the case and provide consultation on advocacy strategies." The request represented recognition of Maya's emerging expertise in a field she'd never formally studied. Other medical professionals were seeking her input based on her proven success in navigating bureaucratic obstacles. "I'd be happy to review the case," Maya said, feeling the weight of professional responsibility settle on her shoulders. "Excellent. I'll send the files over tomorrow. This could potentially save a child's life." "Miss Rodriguez." After ending the call, Maya sat quietly, processing the day's events. Thomas's visit had reminded her of how far she'd come from her previous circumstances. Carmen's school project demonstrated her sister's growing confidence and advocacy skills. The consulting request indicated Maya's professional reputation was expanding beyond Dr. Hartford's practice. Most significantly, Dr. Hartford's use of the word family had crystallized something she'd been feeling but hadn't dared to name. They had indeed become a family unconventional, created by choice rather than genetics, but bound by love and mutual commitment. When Dr. Hartford knocked on their apartment door that evening, with takeout dinner and homework help for Carmen, Maya realized that their found family had grown to encompass not just crisis support, but everyday joy and companionship. "I brought Chinese food and calculus assistance," he announced with mock seriousness. Carmen mentioned she needed help with a long division, and Maya, "I thought you might want to discuss the Walsh consultation." As they spread dinner across their small table, with Carmen chattering about her upcoming science project and Maya describing her conversation with Dr. Walsh, the ordinariness of the moment felt miraculous. 6 months ago, such domestic tranquility had seemed impossible. Now it felt like the natural result of courage, compassion, and the willingness to create family from the raw materials of shared care and commitment. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside their warm apartment, spring had already arrived. Spring arrived with unexpected urgency that year, melting winter's grip in a matter of weeks and flooding the city with the green promise of renewal. Maya stood before the mirror in the medical center's staff bathroom, adjusting the navy blazer Dr. Hartford had helped her select for the Regional Medical Association conference. The reflection staring back at her bore little resemblance to the desperate teenager who had first entered these halls 7 months ago. The conference was being held at the prestigious Meridian Hotel downtown, a venue Maya had only glimpsed from bus windows during her previous life. Now she would be presenting their innovative care model to an audience of physicians, administrators, and healthcare policy makers from across the state. "You're going to be magnificent," Margaret assured her, appearing in the bathroom doorway with a warm smile. "Dr. Hartford has been practicing his portion of the presentation all week, but everyone knows the real star will be you." Maya's stomach fluttered with nervous energy. The past month had been devoted to preparing their presentation, crafting slides that told their story without compromising Carmen's privacy or sensationalizing their struggles. They decided to focus on the systemic innovations rather than personal details. The employment structure, insurance navigation strategies, and integrated care model that could be replicated in other practices. Carmen burst through the bathroom door with her typical exuberance, wearing the new dress Maya had bought for the occasion. The 10-year-old would be joining them for the presentation, not as a patient to be displayed, but as a young advocate. sharing her perspective on patient-centered care. "Maya, look what Dr. Hartford gave me." Carmen held up a small pin shaped like a brain with tiny lightning bolts representing neural activity. "He said it's for people who understand that different brains can do amazing things." Maya fastened the pin to Carmen's dress collar, marveling at her sister's transformation from ashamed patient to confident spokesperson. The girl who had once whispered about thunderstorms in her head now spoke eloquently about neuroplasticity and seizure management. The conference hall was intimidating in its grandeur: crystal chandeliers, deep burgundy carpeting, and an audience of several hundred medical professionals. Maya recognized some faces from medical journals Dr. Hartford had shared with her, distinguished physicians whose research shaped treatment protocols nationwide. Dr. Hartford found them near the registration table, looking polished and confident in his charcoal suit. His presence provided the anchor Maya needed as they navigated through clusters of networking. "Colleagues, Maya, Carmen, I'd like you to meet Dr. Rebecca Nathanson from the State Department of Health," Dr. Hartford said, approaching a woman whose silver hair and keen eyes suggested both wisdom and authority. "Dr. Nathanson has been following our work with great interest." Dr. Nathanson extended her hand to Maya with genuine warmth. "Miss Rodriguez, your insurance advocacy work has been creating quite a buzz in policy circles. We've had 3 different practices inquire about implementing similar programs." "That's wonderful," Maya replied, struggling to process that her work was generating attention beyond their immediate circle. "And Carmen," Dr. Nathanson continued, crouching to the girls, I understand you're something of an expert on patient experience. Would you be willing to share some thoughts during the panel discussion after your presentation?" Carmen nodded eagerly, her confidence blossoming under adult recognition and respect. Maya watched this interaction with wonder, remembering how Carmen had once cowered during medical appointments, too intimidated to voice her own needs. Their presentation slot arrived with breathtaking swiftness. Maya found herself on stage beside Dr. Hartford, facing an audience whose attention felt both encouraging and overwhelming. She'd practiced her opening remarks countless times, but standing before these accomplished professionals, the words felt inadequate to capture their journey's true significance. 7 months ago, I walked into Dr. Hartford's office prepared to trade anything, including myself, for my sister's medical care. Maya began, her voice steadying as she found her rhythm. "I thought I was asking for charity. Instead, I discovered something more valuable: the possibility of creating sustainable solutions that preserve dignity while providing access to essential health care." The audience's attention was immediate and complete. Maya proceeded through their presentation, explaining how her employment had evolved from desperate bargain to legitimate career development, how Carmen's case had highlighted gaps in traditional health care delivery, and how their model addressed both medical and socioeconomic factors in treatment success. Dr. Hartford seamlessly picked up the medical perspective, discussing Carmen's neurological improvements and the importance of addressing family stress as a component of pediatric care. His slides showed brain scans documenting Carmen's progress, treatment timelines, and comparative cost analysis that demonstrated the economic wisdom of comprehensive support. But the presentation's most powerful moment came when Carmen stepped forward to address the audience directly. "Before I met Dr. Hartford, I was scared of my brain," she said with remarkable composure. "I thought it was broken and wrong. Now I know it's just different, and different can be special. But the most important thing isn't just the medicine, it's having people who believe you're worth taking care of." The applause that followed was more than polite professional acknowledgement. Maya heard genuine emotion in the response, recognition that Carmen's words had cut through clinical terminology to reach the human heart of healthcare delivery. During the question and answer session, queries ranged from practical implementation details to broader policy implications. Maya found herself fielding complex questions about insurance navigation, employment law compliance, and scalability challenges with increasing confidence. "Miss Rodriguez," asked Dr. Patricia Vance from University Medical Center, "what safeguards exist to prevent exploitation in arrangements like yours?" How do we ensure vulnerable families aren't taken advantage of by providers seeking cheap labor? The question struck at Maya's deepest fears, the concern that had haunted her since first proposing her desperate bargain. But months of experience had given her a thoughtful response. Transparency is essential. Maya replied, "Every aspect of my employment is documented, standardized, and subject to the same regulations as any other position. The key is creating legitimate opportunities rather than exploitative arrangements. My job exists because Dr. Hartford needed administrative support, not because he pitied our circumstances." Dr. Hartford nodded approvingly. The employment opportunity had to provide genuine value to the practice, while meeting Maya's family's needs. Without that mutual benefit, the arrangement would be unsustainable and potentially harmful. After their presentation, Maya was approached by representatives from 4 different medical practices interested in implementing similar programs. Dr. Nathanson introduced her to colleagues from the State Insurance Commission who wanted to discuss advocacy training protocols. Most significantly, Dr. Catherine Mills from the Regional Children's Hospital offered Maya a consulting position, developing patient advocacy programs across their network of affiliated practices. "We've been struggling with insurance authorization delays and family support gaps," Dr. Mills explained during their conversation over lunch. "Your model addresses both issues while creating career pathways for dedicated family advocates. Would you be interested in helping us design a pilot program?" Maya looked to Dr. Hartford, who was deep in conversation with Carmen about potential summer science camps. The sight of them together, the distinguished physician and the animated 10-year-old, reminded her of how far they'd all traveled from that desperate morning months ago. "I'd need to maintain my responsibilities at Hartford Medical Center," Maya said carefully. "Dr. Hartford and Carmen are my family. Any consulting work would have to accommodate that priority." Dr. Mills smiled. "I wouldn't expect otherwise. Family comes first. That's exactly the philosophy we need to incorporate into our patient care model." The drive home that evening was filled with excited chatter. As Carmen recounted every detail of her conference experience, she'd been invited to participate in a youth advisory panel for the Regional Medical Association, asked to contribute to a newsletter article about patient perspectives, and given contact information for 3 other children dealing with similar neurological conditions. "Maya, did you know there are kids all over the state who have brains like mine?" Carmen asked from the back seat of Dr. Hartford's car. Dr. Mills said maybe we could start a support group where kids could talk to each other about what it's like. Maya turned to study her sister's animated face, amazed by Carmen's instinct for helping others despite her own recent struggles. The girl who had once felt isolated by her condition now wanted to create community for others facing similar challenges. "That sounds like a wonderful idea, Mija. We could help other families navigate the same problems we've faced." Dr. Hartford caught Maya's eye in the rearview mirror. "I think Carmen's onto something important. Peer support can be incredibly powerful for children dealing with chronic conditions." That evening, as they celebrated their conference success with pizza and Carmen's favorite ice cream, Maya reflected on the day's revelations. Her work was expanding beyond their immediate family to potentially impact hundreds of other families. Carmen was developing into a young advocate whose insights could influence pediatric care policies. Dr. Hartford remained their anchor, but their roles had evolved into something approaching true equality rather than dependence. The celebration was interrupted by Maya's phone ringing with an unfamiliar number. She answered cautiously, still wary of unexpected contact after Thomas's disruptive visit. "Maya Rodriguez, this is Jessica Chen from Channel 7 News. We were at the medical conference today and would love to feature your story on our evening health segment." Maya's stomach dropped. Media attention was the last thing their family needed, particularly given their hard-won stability and Carmen's privacy concerns. "I appreciate the interest," Maya replied carefully, "but we prefer to keep our personal story private. What about just discussing the advocacy work? We could focus on the policy implications rather than personal details." Maya looked at Dr. Hartford, who was listening to her side of the conversation with obvious concern. They'd worked so hard to build legitimacy and professional credibility. Would media coverage help or harm their efforts? Could I call you back tomorrow? I'd like to discuss this with my colleagues before making a decision. After ending the call, Maya found herself grappling with unexpected complexities of success. Their story had power to help other families, but publicity could also threaten the privacy and normalcy they'd worked so hard to achieve. What do you think? She asked Dr. Hartford. I think the decision should be yours and Carmen's, he replied. Thoughtfully, media attention can amplify important messages, but it can also complicate personal lives in unpredictable ways. Carmen, who had been listening with typical perceptiveness, offered her own perspective. Will it help other kids like me? It might, Maya said honestly. Then maybe we should think about it, but only if we can still be a regular family most of the time. Her sister's wisdom continued to astound Maya. At 10 years old, Carmen understood the balance between public service and private happiness with remarkable maturity. Later that night, after Carmen had fallen asleep clutching her conference materials, Maya and Dr. Hartford sat in the living room discussing the day's opportunities and challenges. I never imagined our story would reach this level of attention, Maya admitted. Sometimes I feel like we're moving too fast, changing too quickly. Growth can be overwhelming, Dr. Hartford agreed. But Maya, you've earned every opportunity that's come your way. Your advocacy work is genuinely innovative, and Carmen's insights are valuable contributions to pediatric care understanding. What if we make the wrong choice about the media coverage? What if publicity ruins what we've built? Dr. Hartford was quiet for a moment, considering his response. Whatever you decide, we'll face the consequences together. That's what families do. They support each other through both successes and setbacks. Maya looked around their small apartment, noting how it had transformed over the months. Carmen's artwork covered the walls, medical journals shared space, with children's books on their shelves, and Dr. Hartford's presence had become as natural as breathing. When I first came to your office, I was prepared to sacrifice everything for Carmen's health, Maya said softly. I never imagined we'd gain so much more than medical care. You didn't sacrifice yourself, Maya. You invested yourself in something bigger than survival. There's a profound difference. As spring rain began pattering against their windows, Maya felt the truth of his words settling into her heart. They had indeed created something bigger than survival. They'd built a family founded on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the radical belief that everyone deserved both dignity and care. Tomorrow would bring new decisions about media coverage, consulting opportunities, and the ongoing challenges of their expanding influence. But tonight, surrounded by the people who had chosen to love and support her, Maya felt ready for whatever the future might hold. 1 year later, Maya stood in the doorway of her new office at the Regional Healthcare Advocacy Center, watching the morning sun stream through windows that overlooked the same neighborhood where she and Carmen had once lived in desperate poverty. The irony wasn't lost on her. She could see their old tenement building from her corner office, a daily reminder of how dramatically their lives had transformed. The Advocacy Center had been her brainchild, developed through a collaboration between Dr. Hartford's practice, the Regional Medical Association, and the State Health Department. What had begun as Maya's personal struggle to secure Carmen's treatment had evolved into a comprehensive program serving hundreds of families across 3 counties. Maya, the Henderson family is here for their appointment, announced Jennifer Walsh, who had become Maya's assistant after leaving her position at Children's Hospital. The role reversal never ceased to amaze Maya. The same Dr. Walsh, who had once sought her consultation, now worked alongside her in advocating for complex medical cases. Maya reviewed the Henderson file as she walked to the conference room. 8-year-old Michael Henderson suffered from a rare genetic condition requiring experimental treatment that insurance companies routinely denied. His parents, both working-class individuals without college educations, had been navigating the healthcare bureaucracy for months without success. The family's situation felt achingly familiar. Mrs. Henderson's exhausted eyes and Mr. Henderson's defensive posture spoke of battles fought and lost, of hope deferred and dignity eroded by systemic indifference. Maya recognized their desperation because she had lived it, understood their fear because it had once consumed her own nights. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, I'm Maya Rodriguez," she said, extending her hand with the warmth she wished someone had shown her during those dark months. "Tell me about Michael." As the Hendersons shared their story, the delayed diagnosis mounting, medical bills, insurance denials couched in bureaucratic language, Maya took detailed notes while mentally crafting their advocacy strategy. The process had become second nature, a combination of analytical thinking and passionate determination that had proven remarkably effective. "Here's what we're going to do," Maya explained after hearing their complete situation. "First, I'm going to connect you with Dr. Hartford for a second opinion and comprehensive treatment plan. Second, we'll challenge the insurance denial using medical necessity documentation and cost-benefit analysis. Third, I'll work with you to access pharmaceutical company assistance programs while we fight for coverage." Mrs. Henderson's eyes filled with tears of relief. "You really think you can help us?" "I know I can," Maya replied with the confidence born of experience, "because someone once helped me when I thought there was no hope left." After the Hendersons left with a detailed action plan and renewed optimism, Maya returned to her office to find Dr. Hartford waiting with 2 cups of coffee and a familiar smile. "How did the consultation go?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her desk, a reversal of their positions from that first desperate meeting months ago. "They remind me of us," Maya said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Scared, angry, determined not to give up on their child. And now they have you fighting for them." Maya considered this observation while reviewing her afternoon schedule. The Advocacy Center now employed 12 staff members, including 3 other young adults whose personal experiences with healthcare challenges had prepared them for professional advocacy work. Maya had discovered that lived experience, combined with proper training and support, often proved more effective than traditional credentials. "Dr. Hartford," Maya said, setting down her coffee cup, "I've been thinking about Jessica Chen's request for the follow-up story. They'd declined the initial media interview a year ago, choosing privacy over publicity while their new life took shape. But Chen had remained respectfully persistent, checking in periodically about featuring their advocacy work's expansion. Carmen and I discussed it again last night. She thinks we're ready now." Dr. Hartford nodded thoughtfully. "What changed your mind?" "Yesterday I got 3 phone calls from families in different states who found our contact information online. They're all facing impossible choices between financial survival and their children's health. If sharing our story can reach even one family before they hit rock bottom, isn't that worth the loss of privacy? The decision is entirely yours and Carmen's." Dr. Hartford replied, "But I think you're right about the potential impact." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of familiar laughter, echoing through the Advocacy Center's hallways. Carmen's voice, bright and confident, drifted from the youth consultation room, where she spent afternoons mentoring other children dealing with chronic conditions. At 11 years old, Carmen had become something remarkable, a peer counselor whose insights helped newly diagnosed children and their families navigate both medical and emotional challenges. Her epilepsy had been seizure-free for 8 months, but more importantly, she'd transformed her condition from a source of shame into a platform for helping others. Maya. Carmen called, appearing in the office doorway with her typical exuberance. "Emma just got approved for her surgery. The insurance company said yes." Emma Kowalski was a 9-year-old with a spinal condition that required complex corrective surgery. Maya had been working on her case for 6 weeks, and Carmen had become Emma's unofficial mentor during the waiting period. "That's wonderful news," Maya said, pulling Carmen into a hug. "How is Emma feeling?" "Scared but excited." I told her about my first surgery and how Dr. Hartford explained everything so I wouldn't be afraid. Maya exchanged glances with Dr. Hartford, both recognizing how naturally Carmen had stepped into a counseling role. Her ability to translate complex medical concepts into child-friendly language, combined with her genuine empathy for other young patients, had proven invaluable to the Advocacy Center's mission. "Carmen," Dr. Hartford said, "Maya and I were just discussing the possibility of doing that television interview with Miss Chen. How would you feel about sharing our story publicly?" Carmen considered the question with characteristic seriousness. Would it help other kids like Emma and Michael? It might, Maya replied honestly. Then I think we should do it. But can we make sure they understand that having epilepsy doesn't make you broken? I want kids to know they can still be normal and special at the same time. Maya marveled at her sister's wisdom. Carmen had somehow intuited the most important message. Their story could convey that medical challenges didn't define worth or limit potential. The interview was scheduled for the following week, filmed at the Advocacy Center with Carmen, Maya, and Dr. Hartford sharing their journey from desperation to hope to professional success. Jessica Chen proved to be a thoughtful interviewer, focusing on systemic issues rather than sensationalizing their personal struggles. Maya, when you first approached Dr. Hartford, you were prepared to trade anything for your sister's medical care. Chen observed during their conversation, looking back. What do you wish other families in similar situations could know? Maya paused, considering her response carefully. I wish they could know that asking for help isn't weakness, and that the right help preserves dignity rather than destroying it. Most importantly, I want them to know that their love for their children is enough. They don't need to sacrifice themselves to prove their worth. Dr. Hartford added his perspective on healthcare accessibility and the importance of addressing socioeconomic factors in treatment success. But the interview's most powerful moment came when Carmen spoke directly to other children facing medical challenges. Having a different brain or body doesn't make you less than anyone else, she said, with remarkable composure. It just means you might need different kinds of help sometimes. And that's okay, because everyone needs help with something. The segment aired on a Friday evening, reaching an audience Maya hadn't anticipated. By Monday morning, the Advocacy Center's phones were ringing constantly with inquiries from families across the region. More surprisingly, Maya received calls from healthcare administrators and policymakers interested in replicating their model in other communities. Dr. Rebecca Nathanson from the State Department of Health called personally to discuss expanding the Advocacy Center concept statewide. Maya, your model addresses healthcare access gaps we've been struggling with for decades. Would you be interested in developing a proposal for statewide implementation? The conversation marked another milestone in Maya's improbable journey from desperate teenager to recognized healthcare policy innovator. But as she hung up the phone, her first thought was of Carmen and Dr. Hartford, the family that had made everything possible. That evening, they celebrated another successful case closure with dinner at Carmen's favorite restaurant. The Brennan family, whose son Marcus had been Maya's first major advocacy success, had invited them to join Marcus's celebration dinner, marking 1 year of successful enzyme replacement therapy. Maya watched Marcus and Carmen compare notes about their respective treatments. Two children who had been given second chances at normal childhoods through access to appropriate medical care. Mrs. Brennan approached Maya during dessert with tears in her eyes. I want you to know that you saved our family, she said quietly. Not just Marcus's health, but our marriage, our financial stability, our hope for the future. Maya felt the weight of Mrs. Brennan's gratitude settle in her chest alongside similar thanks from dozens of other families. The Advocacy Center had processed over 100 cases in its first year, achieving successful outcomes for 87% of their clients. As they walked home that night, Carmen slipped her hand into Maya's with comfortable familiarity. Maya, do you ever miss our old life? The question surprised Maya with its complexity. What do you mean, Mija? I mean, do you miss when it was just us against the world? Sometimes I think about our little apartment and how we used to huddle together during thunderstorms, both kinds of thunderstorms. Maya considered her sister's question carefully. There had been a fierce intimacy to their shared struggle, a bond forged in desperation that had shaped both of their characters profoundly. I miss feeling like we could handle anything as long as we had each other, Maya said finally. But I don't miss the fear or the impossible choices or worrying that I wasn't enough to keep you safe. Carmen nodded thoughtfully. I like having Dr. Hartford as part of our family. It feels like we're stronger now, not just the two of us anymore. Dr. Hartford, walking slightly behind them, caught up with Carmen's words. You know, before I met you both, I thought I understood what family meant. My brother's death had convinced me that loving someone just led to loss. Maya and Carmen stopped walking, both recognizing the significance of Dr. Hartford's admission. He rarely spoke about his brother or the grief that had shaped his career. Choice, but watching you taught me that family isn't about avoiding loss, he continued. It's about choosing to love someone completely, regardless of what challenges you might face together. Maya felt tears prick her eyes as she understood the full scope of their mutual transformation. She and Carmen had gained not just medical care and financial stability, but a father figure who had learned to love again. Dr. Hartford had gained not just dedicated employees, but daughters who had helped him heal from his own childhood trauma. So we're all different people than we were a year ago, Carmen observed with her characteristic insight. Better people, Maya added quietly. Luckier people, Dr. Hartford concluded. 6 months later, Maya stood before the Senate Healthcare Subcommittee in Washington, D.C., testifying about healthcare accessibility innovations. The Advocacy Center model had been implemented in 12 states, and Maya had been invited to share their methodology with federal policymakers, senators. The key insight is that patients and families aren't problems to be managed, they're partners. To be empowered, Maya explained to the distinguished panel. When we provide people with the tools and support they need, they become advocates not just for themselves, but for systemic improvements that benefit everyone. The testimony represented the culmination of a journey that had begun in desperation and evolved into national recognition. But as Maya fielded questions from senators and congressional staff, her mind kept drifting to Carmen and Dr. Hartford, who were watching the proceedings from the gallery. Carmen, now 12 and thriving in middle school, had become a sought-after speaker at pediatric conferences. Her insights about patient experience and peer support had influenced treatment protocols at hospitals across the region. Dr. Hartford had been elected president of the Regional Medical Association, a position he was using to advance integrated care models and healthcare accessibility initiatives. During a break in the hearings, Maya stepped outside to call Margaret, who was managing the Advocacy Center in her absence. "How are things going?" Maya asked. "Busy as always," Margaret replied with evident satisfaction. "We just got approval for the Teenage Pregnancy Support Program, and Dr. Walsh thinks we'll be ready to launch the mental health advocacy track by fall." Maya smiled, remembering when Margaret had been Dr. Hartford's sole receptionist. Now she served as the Advocacy Center's operations director, overseeing programs that had grown beyond anything Maya had initially envisioned. "Oh, and Maya," Margaret added, "a young man called this morning asking about our family advocacy program. He's been caring for his disabled father since he was 14, and he's interested in potentially joining our staff." Maya felt her heart constrict with recognition and hope. Another young person carrying burdens beyond their years, looking for ways to transform their struggles into strengths. The cycle continued, but now there were systems in place to provide support rather than requiring desperate sacrifice. That evening, Maya, Carmen, and Dr. Hartford had dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Potomac River. The setting was elegant and expensive, the kind of place Maya had only glimpsed from afar during her previous life. But the conversation was the same comfortable mix of family news, professional updates, and gentle teasing that characterized their daily interactions. "Maya," Dr. Hartford said during dessert, "I have something to give you both." He pulled out 2 small wrapped packages, placing them carefully on the table. Maya and Carmen exchanged curious glances before opening their gifts simultaneously. Inside Maya's box was a delicate gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a bridge. Carmen's contained a matching bracelet with the same bridge design. The bridge represents the connection between where you were and where you are now, Dr. Hartford explained. But more importantly, it represents the connections you've built with each other and with everyone you've helped along the way. Maya fastened the necklace around her throat, feeling the weight of the pendant settle against her chest like a talisman. Carmen held up her bracelet to catch the restaurant's soft lighting, admiring the way the gold seemed to glow. "Dr. Hartford," Carmen said seriously, "do you have a bridge too?" He smiled, pulling back his shirt cuff to reveal a watch with a bridge engraved on its face. "I do, because you'd helped me build a bridge back to believing in family." As they walked through the capital city that night, Maya reflected on the improbable journey that had brought them to this moment. 3 years ago, She had been prepared to sacrifice everything for Carmen's medical care. Now she was influencing national healthcare policy while maintaining the family bonds that had given her life meaning. The girl who had once offered herself as payment for medical care had become a woman whose voice shaped how society approached healthcare accessibility. The child who had been ashamed of her neurological condition had become an advocate whose insights improved treatment for hundreds of other young patients. The physician who had lost faith in family connections had rediscovered the healing power of chosen love. They had created something unprecedented, a family forged not by genetics or legal arrangement, but by the radical decision to care for each other completely and permanently. Their story had become a model replicated across the country, but its true success lay in the simple fact that three broken people had found wholeness in their commitment to each other's well-being. Standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial as the sun set over the nation's capital, Maya understood that their journey was far from complete. There would always be more families facing impossible choices, more children needing advocates, more systems requiring transformation. But now they faced those challenges not as desperate individuals, but as a family united by purpose and strengthened by love. Carmen tugged on Maya's sleeve, pointing toward the memorial's inscription about government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Maya, do you think we're part of that? Making things better for the people? Maya pulled her sister close, meeting Dr. Hartford's eyes over Carmen's head. In his gaze, she saw the same sense of completion and continuing purpose that filled her own heart. I think, Mija, that we're exactly where we're supposed to be, doing exactly what we're supposed to do, with exactly the right people. As they walked down the memorial steps together, Maya felt the bridge pendant warm against her skin, a reminder that love could indeed build pathways between desperation and hope, between individual struggle and collective healing, between the people they had been and the family they had chosen to become. The following morning brought unexpected news that would test their family bonds in an entirely different way. Maya was reviewing Senate feedback on her testimony when her phone rang with a call from an international number she didn't recognize. Miss Rodriguez, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez from the Pan American Health Organization. We've been following your advocacy work, and we have a proposition that might interest you. Maya listened with growing astonishment as Dr. Vasquez explained that the World Health Organization was seeking consultants to develop healthcare accessibility programs. In developing nations, their advocacy model had been identified as potentially adaptable for communities facing severe resource constraints. We're particularly interested in your background, Dr. Vasquez continued. You understand both the patient-family perspective and the systemic barriers that prevent access to care. This project would involve 6 months in Guatemala, working with indigenous communities to establish sustainable healthcare advocacy networks. The opportunity was staggering, a chance to impact global healthcare policy while drawing on the experiences that had shaped her own journey. But it would mean leaving Carmen and Dr. Hartford for half a year, the longest separation their family had ever contemplated. I'll need to discuss this with my family, Maya said carefully. When would you need an answer? Take all the time you need. This is a significant commitment, and we understand the importance of family considerations. That evening, Maya shared the offer with Carmen and Dr. Hartford over dinner at their hotel restaurant. The conversation that followed revealed how much their relationship had evolved from caregiver and dependence to true equals, making joint decisions. It sounds like an incredible opportunity, Dr. Hartford said thoughtfully. But 6 months is a long time. Carmen, now mature enough to understand the implications, surprised them both with her response. Maya, you've spent your whole life taking care of me. Maybe it's time for you to do something just for yourself. But I've never been away from you for more than a few days, Maya protested. What if your condition changes? What if you need me? Carmen reached across the table to take Maya's hand. I have Dr. Hartford now, and I'm stronger than I used to be. Besides, if you help create these programs in other countries, you'll be helping kids like me all over the world. Dr. Hartford nodded agreement. Carmen's right, Maya. This opportunity could amplify your impact exponentially. And we'll be here when you return, The decision wasn't made lightly. Maya spent the next week researching Guatemala's healthcare challenges, consulting with other international development workers, and wrestling with her protective instincts toward Carmen. The girl who had once been her entire reason for living was now encouraging her to expand her horizons beyond their immediate family. 3 weeks later, Maya found herself on a plane to Guatemala City, carrying 2 suitcases and a heart heavy with both excitement and separation anxiety. Carmen and Dr. Hartford had seen her off at the airport, their embrace lasting long enough to memorize the feeling of being surrounded by unconditional love. The work in Guatemala proved more challenging and rewarding than Maya had anticipated. She found herself in rural communities where families faced healthcare barriers that made her previous struggles seem manageable by comparison. Children with treatable conditions went without care not because of insurance complications, but because there were no medical facilities within 100 miles. Working alongside local community health workers, Maya adapted her advocacy strategies to address entirely different systemic obstacles. Instead of navigating insurance bureaucracies, she helped establish transportation networks to connect remote villages with regional medical centers rather than fighting for coverage approvals. She worked with international aid organizations to secure donated medical supplies and equipment. The language barrier proved less significant than Maya had feared. Desperation and hope spoke the same language regardless of nationality. She recognized her younger self in the eyes of mothers carrying sick children on dangerous journeys to seek medical care, saw Carmen's resilience reflected in young patients adapting to chronic conditions with remarkable courage. Maria Santos, a 12-year-old with diabetes, reminded Maya particularly of Carmen's early struggles. The girl's family had been administering inconsistent insulin doses because they couldn't afford regular supplies, leading to dangerous blood sugar fluctuations that threatened her long-term health. "Your daughter needs consistent medication to live a normal life," Maya explained to Maria's parents through a translator, remembering similar conversations from her own past. "But we can create a system that makes this sustainable for your community." Working with the local health clinic, Maya helped establish a diabetic support network that pooled resources to purchase insulin in bulk, reducing costs for individual families while ensuring consistent supply. Maria's case became a model for managing chronic conditions in resource-limited settings, with peer support networks providing both practical assistance and emotional encouragement. Regular video calls with Carmen and Dr. Hartford kept Maya connected to home while allowing her to share the transformative work happening in Guatemala. Carmen was thriving in her role as peer counselor at the Advocacy Center, her confidence continuing to grow as she helped newly diagnosed children navigate their medical journeys. "Maya, you should see Carmen's latest presentation," Dr. Hartford reported during one of their weekly calls. She spoke to a group of pediatric nurses about patient communication, and they were taking notes like she was a medical professor. Carmen appeared on screen with a grin that hadn't changed despite her increasing maturity. "Maya, I miss you every day, but I'm so proud of what you're doing. Are you helping lots of kids? More than I ever imagined possible," Maya replied honestly. "But I miss you both terribly." The separation was proving difficult for all of them, but it was also demonstrating the strength of bonds that could withstand distance and time. Maya's work in Guatemala was succeeding partly because of the foundation of love and support that remained constant despite the miles between them. Midway through her assignment, Maya received news that would forever change her understanding of impact and legacy. Dr. Vasquez called with an update that took her breath away. "Maya, the healthcare accessibility model you've developed here is being adopted by the Ministry of Health for implementation in 12 additional provinces. Your work has the potential to reach over 500,000 people across rural Guatemala." The scope of potential impact was overwhelming. Maya thought of all the children like Maria who would receive consistent medical care, all the families who would avoid the impossible choices she had once faced, all the communities that would develop sustainable healthcare advocacy networks. But even as she celebrated this professional triumph, Maya's thoughts turned to home and the family that had made everything possible. Her success in Guatemala felt meaningful only because it was connected to the love and support waiting for her return. The final month of her assignment passed quickly as Maya worked with local leaders to ensure the sustainability of programs they'd established. She trained community health advocates, developed resource-sharing protocols, and created evaluation systems to monitor long-term outcomes. On her last day in Guatemala, Maria Santos presented Maya with a hand-woven bracelet made in traditional patterns by the women of her village. "Para que recuerdas que el amor no tiene fronteras," Maria said shyly. "So you remember that love has no borders." The flight home felt both endless and too short. Maya found herself eager to return to family while processing the life-changing experiences of the past 6 months. She'd proven to herself that her impact could extend far beyond their immediate community. But she'd also learned that professional success felt hollow without personal connections to give it meaning. Carmen and Dr. Hartford were waiting at the airport gate, their faces lighting up with joy the moment they spotted Maya emerging from the jet bridge. The reunion was emotional, and perfect months of separation dissolving in an embrace that reaffirmed every bond they'd built together. "Welcome home," Dr. Hartford said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "We've missed you more than words can express." Carmen had grown noticeably during Maya's absence, both physically and emotionally. At 13, she carried herself with new confidence while maintaining the warmth and wisdom that had always defined her character. "Maya, wait until you see everything that's happened while you were gone," Carmen said excitedly as they drove home from the airport. "The Advocacy Center has doubled in size, and Dr. Hartford started a research program, and I've been accepted to a special summer camp for young patient advocates." The changes were remarkable but felt like natural evolution rather than radical transformation. Maya realized that their family had grown strong enough to support individual growth and professional expansion while maintaining core connections. That evening, as they sat in the living room of the apartment that had once represented desperate poverty, but now felt like a cherished family home, Maya shared stories from Guatemala while Carmen and Dr. Hartford updated her on developments in their work. The Advocacy Center had indeed expanded significantly, with satellite offices in 4 additional cities and a waiting list of medical practices seeking to implement their integrated care model. Dr. Hartford's research into family-centered healthcare delivery was generating interest from major medical journals. Carmen's peer counseling work had been featured in a pediatric psychology textbook as an example of innovative patient support strategies. "It sounds like you've all been just as busy as I was," Maya observed with pride and amazement. "We learned something important while you were gone," Dr. Hartford said thoughtfully. "Our family is strong enough to support each other's individual growth without losing what connects us." Carmen nodded agreement. "I used to think that if we weren't all together all the time, our family might break apart, but now I know that love doesn't disappear just because someone goes away for a while." Maya felt tears gathering in her eyes as she absorbed the wisdom of her sister's words. Their family had not only survived separation, but had grown stronger through the experience of maintaining connection across distance and time. 6 months later, Maya stood before another congressional hearing, this time presenting findings from her Guatemala work alongside domestic advocacy center outcomes. The integrated model they'd developed was being considered for federal funding that would allow nationwide implementation. Congressman Williams: "The key insight from our international work is that healthcare accessibility challenges share common features regardless of economic context," Maya explained. "The solutions we've developed domestically translate effectively to very different settings because they address fundamental human needs for dignity, advocacy, and comprehensive support." In the gallery, Carmen and Dr. Hartford watched with pride as Maya fielded complex questions from lawmakers and policy experts. The girl who had once been prepared to trade herself for medical care was now influencing healthcare policy on a global scale. But the true measure of their success wasn't found in congressional testimony or international recognition. It was visible in the thousands of families who had received advocacy support, the medical practices that had adopted integrated care models, and the young advocates who were following pathways Maya had helped create. Most importantly, it was evident in the unshakable bonds between three people who had chosen to become family. Despite every obstacle society had placed in their path. As they left the Capitol building that day, walking together through the same streets where Maya had first testified years ago, Carmen slipped her hand into Maya's with familiar comfort. "Maya, do you think our story has a happy ending?" Maya squeezed her sister's hand while catching Dr. Hartford's eye over Carmen's head. In his smile, she saw a reflection of her own understanding, that their story didn't have an ending at all. It had become a beginning that continued to unfold. With each family they helped, each barrier they removed, each life they touched with the radical power of unconditional love, I think, Mija, that our story is just getting started. 5 years had passed since Maya's return from Guatemala, and the Advocacy Center had evolved into something she could never have envisioned. During those early desperate days, the organization now operated in 37 states, with international programs spanning 6 countries across Latin America and Southeast Asia. Maya found herself at the helm of a movement that had transformed from personal desperation into systematic change, affecting hundreds of thousands of lives. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the new headquarters building, a modern glass structure that housed over 100 employees dedicated to healthcare advocacy, policy reform, and family support services. Maya paused at her office window, watching staff members arrive for another day of changing lives, each carrying their own stories of transformation and purpose. "Maya, the documentary crew is here for the final interviews," announced Sarah Patel, Maya's executive assistant and a former Advocacy Center client whose brother had battled leukemia. The BBC had been following their story for 18 months, creating a feature-length documentary about healthcare accessibility and the power of grassroots advocacy. The irony of being the subject of international media attention wasn't lost on Maya. The young woman who had once avoided publicity to protect her family's privacy now understood that visibility could be a tool for systemic change. Their story had become larger than their personal journey. It represented possibility for millions of families facing similar crises worldwide. Carmen, now 18 and a freshman at Stanford University studying public policy and neuroscience, had grown into a remarkable young woman whose childhood experiences with chronic illness had shaped her into a passionate advocate for pediatric healthcare reform. She'd chosen Stanford partly for its proximity to Silicon Valley's innovation culture, hoping to develop technology solutions for healthcare accessibility challenges. "The neural interface research here is incredible," Carmen had explained during her last visit home. "They're developing communication devices for nonverbal patients that could revolutionize how we understand neurological conditions. Imagine if children like I was could express their experiences directly to medical teams through brain-computer interfaces." Dr. Hartford, now 62 and serving as the Advocacy Center's chief medical officer, had evolved from reluctant helper to passionate reformer. His hair had silvered completely, and lines of compassion had deepened around his eyes, but his dedication to their mission had only intensified with time. The BBC documentary team had captured extraordinary footage over the past year and a half. Maya testifying before international health organizations, Carmen presenting research at medical conferences, Dr. Hartford training physicians in family-centered care approaches, and dozens of families whose lives had been transformed through their advocacy programs. Director James Morrison had initially approached the project with skepticism about American healthcare stories, but he'd become genuinely invested in understanding how individual desperation could catalyze institutional change. His cameras had followed Maya to refugee camps in Jordan, where she'd helped establish healthcare advocacy programs for displaced Syrian families, and to rural clinics in Thailand, where community health workers were implementing patient navigation models based on their methodology. "Maya, before we begin the final interview, I want you to know that this documentary has changed how I understand healthcare advocacy," Morrison said as they prepared for filming. "Your story demonstrates that expertise can emerge from lived experience in ways that traditional training often cannot replicate." The interview explored themes Maya had contemplated, but never fully articulated: the relationship between personal trauma and professional calling, the ethics of transforming private pain into public advocacy, and the unexpected ways that helping others could heal one's own wounds. When I first walked into Dr. Hartford's office, I thought I was asking for charity. Maya reflected during their conversation. I had no idea I was actually proposing a partnership that would reshape how we think about healthcare delivery. Desperation forced me to see possibilities that conventional thinking had overlooked. Morrison's questions probed deeper into the psychological dynamics of their transformation. How do you reconcile the fact that your sister's illness became the foundation for your life's work? Doesn't that create complex feelings about recovery and success? Maya paused, considering the question that touched on something she'd wrestled with privately for years. Carmen's condition gave our lives purpose and direction, but that doesn't mean I'm grateful for her suffering. What I'm grateful for is discovering that even the most challenging circumstances can become sources of strength and service to others. The documentary's most powerful segment featured Maya, Carmen, and Dr. Hartford returning to their old neighborhood, the tenement building where desperation had once seemed like their permanent address. The building had been renovated as part of an urban renewal project, but the Advocacy Center had established a community health clinic on the ground floor, ensuring that families facing similar crises had immediate access to support. Standing in the clinic's waiting room, Carmen pointed to a mural depicting hands reaching toward a bridge, artwork created by local children participating in the center's youth advocacy program. "This is where it all started," she said quietly. "Not just our story, but thousands of other stories that are still being written." The clinic served over 1,500 families annually, providing not just medical care, but comprehensive advocacy support, insurance navigation assistance, and peer counseling programs. Maya watched a young mother completing paperwork for her son's treatment, remembering her own desperation in similar circumstances years earlier. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, the clinic's director, had once been a patient whose daughter required complex cardiac surgery. Now she led a team of advocates, many of whom had their own stories of healthcare struggles transformed into professional purpose. Maya taught us that lived experience is a form of expertise. Dr. Gonzalez explained to the documentary cameras, "Our advocates understand patient families' needs because they've navigated these systems themselves. That creates a level of trust and effectiveness that traditional healthcare delivery often struggles to achieve." The documentary also captured Carmen's work at Stanford, where she was collaborating with computer science students to develop an app that would help families navigate insurance authorization processes. The application used artificial intelligence to analyze denial letters and suggest appeal strategies based on successful cases from the Advocacy Center's database. "Technology should democratize access to advocacy expertise," Carmen explained, while demonstrating the app's features. "A family in rural Montana should have access to the same navigation tools available to families in major metropolitan areas." Dr. Hartford's portion of the documentary focused on his evolution from traditional physician to healthcare reform advocate. His research on family-centered care models had been published in major medical journals, and he'd been invited to speak at conferences worldwide about integrating social services with clinical treatment. "Maya and Carmen taught me that healing extends far beyond medical intervention," he reflected during his interview. "A child's recovery depends not just on appropriate treatment, but on family stability, economic security, and social support. Healthcare that ignores these factors is fundamentally incomplete." The documentary crew had also captured footage from Maya's recent trip to Bangladesh, where she'd worked with international development organizations to establish healthcare advocacy programs in rural communities. The work required adapting their model to contexts where basic medical infrastructure was still developing, but the core principles of family empowerment and systematic advocacy proved universally applicable. In a village outside Dhaka, Maya had worked with community leaders to establish a cooperative system for purchasing essential medications in bulk, reducing costs while ensuring consistent supply for chronic conditions. The program served over 2,000 families across 12 villages, with peer advocates trained to navigate both traditional healthcare systems and modern medical facilities. The specific challenges vary by context, but the underlying needs are universal. Maya had observed while visiting families participating in the program. Parents everywhere want their children to have access to appropriate medical care with dignity and respect. The most emotionally resonant portion of the documentary featured interviews with families whose lives had been transformed through advocacy center programs. The Henderson family, whose son Michael had been Maya's first major success, now operated their own satellite advocacy office in Ohio. Mrs. Henderson had become a certified patient advocate, using her experience navigating Michael's complex metabolic condition to help other families facing similar challenges. Maya didn't just help us save Michael's life, Mrs. Henderson explained during her interview. She showed us that our struggle could become a source of strength for other families. That transformation of pain into purpose is what makes their model so powerful. The documentary's climactic segment featured the Advocacy Center's 5th anniversary celebration, where over 300 families whose lives had been changed through their programs gathered to share stories and celebrate progress. Children who had been critically ill years earlier were now thriving, their families stable and empowered to help others facing similar crises. Carmen, home from Stanford for the celebration, addressed the gathering with poise that belied her 18 years. 5 years ago, my sister and I were just trying to survive, she began. Today, we're part of a movement that's changing how society approaches healthcare accessibility. That transformation happened because Maya refused to accept that desperation was our only option. Dr. Hartford's remarks focused on the medical community's evolving understanding of comprehensive care. Traditional healthcare training teaches us to treat diseases, he observed. Maya, Carmen, and the families we serve have taught us that our real job is to heal people, and that requires addressing not just medical symptoms, but social determinants of health. Maya's speech concluded the celebration, and the documentary cameras captured her reflection on their journey from individual crisis to systematic change. We started with one family's desperate need for medical care, she said, looking out at the audience of advocates, medical professionals, and transformed families. Today, we represent proof that individual stories of struggle can become collective stories of hope and change. The documentary's final scenes showed Maya, Carmen, and Dr. Hartford in their family home, the same apartment where they'd once huddled together. During Carmen's seizures, now filled with awards, medical journals, and photographs documenting their global impact. But the most meaningful artifacts were simple. Carmen's childhood artwork still displayed on the refrigerator, Dr. Hartford's reading glasses resting on a medical textbook Maya had been studying, and the bridge pendant Maya still wore daily as a reminder of their journey. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Dr. Hartford had said no that first day? Carmen asked during their final family interview. Maya and Dr. Hartford exchanged glances that conveyed years of shared experience and mutual gratitude. I think somehow, someway, we would have found each other, Maya replied. Some connections are too important to miss. Dr. Hartford nodded agreement. Our meeting wasn't really about medical care or employment opportunities. It was about 3 people who needed each other to become who we were meant to be. The documentary's epilogue revealed the continuing expansion of their work. Plans were underway to establish advocacy centers in 15 additional countries, with funding from international development organizations and private foundations. Maya had been invited to join a World Health Organization task force on healthcare accessibility in developing nations. Carmen's app had been downloaded by over 50,000 users, with documented success rates that impressed healthcare policy researchers. Dr. Hartford had been appointed to lead a new research institute focused on family-centered care innovations. But perhaps the most significant development was the announcement that the Advocacy Center would be launching a scholarship program for young adults who had personal experience with healthcare challenges and wanted to pursue careers in medical advocacy. The program would provide full tuition support, professional mentorship, and guaranteed employment opportunities upon graduation. We're creating pathways for the next generation of advocates, Maya explained during the documentary's final interview. Young people who understand healthcare challenges from personal experience. will be the ones to solve problems we haven't even identified yet. The scholarship program's first recipient was Marcus Thompson, a 19-year-old from Detroit whose younger sister had battled cystic fibrosis. Marcus had contacted the Advocacy Center after seeing Maya's congressional testimony online, describing his family's struggles with insurance denials and treatment access. His application essay had moved the selection committee to tears with its combination of analytical thinking and passionate advocacy for improved pediatric care. Marcus reminds me of myself at his age, Maya reflected while reviewing scholarship applications. He has that combination of anger at injustice and determination to create change. That makes for effective advocacy. With proper support and training, he could impact thousands of families facing similar challenges. The program attracted applications from across the country, young adults whose personal experiences with chronic illness, mental health challenges, disability, and healthcare navigation had prepared them for careers in systematic advocacy. Their stories represented a new generation of healthcare reformers whose expertise emerged from lived experience rather than traditional academic preparation. Carmen's work at Stanford had also attracted attention from technology companies interested in healthcare innovation. She'd been offered internships at 3 major firms, but she'd chosen to spend her summer working with the Advocacy Center's new technology development division, focusing on creating digital tools that could democratize access to healthcare navigation expertise. The most sophisticated advocacy strategies in the world don't help families if they can't access them, Carmen observed while demonstrating her latest app prototype. Technology can bridge that gap, making expert guidance available to anyone with a smartphone and internet access. Dr. Hartford's research had evolved to encompass not just family-centered care models, but the broader question of how healthcare systems could better integrate social services, community support, and peer advocacy. His upcoming book, The Healing Connection: Reimagining Healthcare Through Family-Centered Advocacy, would be published by a major academic press with proceeds supporting Advocacy Center programs. The research had attracted interest from medical schools seeking to reform their curricula to include social determinants of health and family advocacy training. Dr. Hartford had been invited to develop pilot programs at 5 medical schools, training future physicians to understand healthcare delivery as a collaborative process involving patients, families, and community advocates. Maya's speaking engagements had expanded to include business schools and corporate leadership conferences, where she discussed how the Advocacy Center's model could inform other industries facing complex social challenges. The intersection of personal mission, systematic thinking, and sustainable impact had lessons beyond healthcare delivery. The principles that transformed our personal crisis into institutional change apply to any situation where individual experiences reveal systematic problems. Maya explained during a recent presentation at Harvard Business School. Whether you're addressing educational inequality, environmental degradation, or economic injustice, the process of translating personal understanding into systematic solutions follows similar patterns. The documentary's release generated international attention that surprised even Maya with its scope and intensity. Healthcare ministers from 12 countries contacted the Advocacy Center seeking consultation on implementing similar programs. Major foundations offered funding for expansion into additional regions. Medical journals requested articles about their methodology and outcomes. More importantly, the documentary inspired hundreds of families to share their own stories of healthcare struggles and systematic barriers. The Advocacy Center's website received over 10,000 contacts in the month following the broadcast, with families from 6 continents requesting support and guidance. We've created something that's bigger than any of us individually, Maya observed during a team meeting reviewing the response to international attention. Our story has become a catalyst for conversations and changes we never could have imagined. When this all started, the global response had also attracted critics who questioned whether individual success stories could truly address systematic healthcare challenges. Some healthcare economists argued that advocacy-based solutions, while emotionally compelling, couldn't scale sufficiently to address the scope of global healthcare accessibility problems Maya had learned to engage with such criticism thoughtfully rather than defensively. Our critics are partially correct that individual advocacy can't solve systematic problems alone, she acknowledged during a debate at a healthcare policy conference. But systematic problems are composed of millions of individual experiences. Change the individual experiences, and you begin to transform the system. The Advocacy Center's research department had begun collecting comprehensive data on their program's outcomes, working with academic partners to conduct rigorous evaluations of their methodology's effectiveness. Preliminary results showed significant improvements, not just in healthcare access, but in family financial stability, children's educational outcomes, and community social cohesion. Dr. Sarah Kim, the center's director of research and evaluation, had previously worked for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention before joining their team. Her studies revealed that healthcare advocacy had ripple effects, extending far beyond medical care. Families receiving comprehensive support showed improved employment stability, housing security, and overall quality of life measures. What Maya, Carmen, and Dr. Hartford discovered intuitively, we're now documenting empirically. Dr. Kim explained during a research presentation, healthcare challenges are rarely isolated medical problems. They're complex social issues requiring integrated solutions that address multiple dimensions of family well-being simultaneously. The data was compelling enough to attract attention from federal policymakers considering legislation to fund healthcare advocacy programs. As part of standard medical care delivery, Maya had been invited to testify before Congress again this time about specific policy recommendations for integrating advocacy services into existing healthcare infrastructure. Carmen's summer internship with the Technology Development Division had produced remarkable innovations that attracted venture capital interest. Her neural interface research from Stanford, combined with practical experience from the Advocacy Center, had led to breakthrough concepts for assistive communication technologies that could help nonverbal patients participate more fully in their own healthcare decisions. The goal isn't just to help patients communicate their needs, Carmen explained during a presentation to potential investors. It's to ensure that every patient, regardless of their communication abilities, can be an active participant in their own care rather than a passive recipient of medical intervention. The technology had potential applications far beyond healthcare. Assistive communication tools could transform educational experiences for students with disabilities, employment opportunities for adults with communication challenges, and social participation for individuals across the autism spectrum. Hartford's book publication had generated speaking requests from medical conferences worldwide, where he shared insights about transforming traditional physician-patient relationships into collaborative partnerships involving families and community advocates. His message resonated particularly strongly with younger physicians who had entered medicine hoping to address social justice issues, but felt constrained by existing healthcare delivery models. Maya and Carmen taught me that being a physician means being a healer in the broadest sense, Dr. Hartford explained during a keynote address to graduating medical students. Healing happens not just through clinical intervention, but through advocacy, education, empowerment, and the creation of conditions that support long-term well-being. The Advocacy Center's influence had begun extending into medical education, with several schools incorporating family advocacy training into their standard curricula. Students learned not just diagnostic skills and treatment protocols, but communication strategies for working with families facing complex social and economic challenges. Maya's role had evolved from direct service provision to strategic leadership and mentorship of the next generation of advocates. She found deep satisfaction in watching young adults, like Marcus Thompson, develop their own advocacy expertise, knowing that the movement would continue growing and evolving long after her direct involvement. The measure of our success isn't just the families we've helped directly, Maya reflected during a recent interview. It's the advocates we've trained, the systems we've influenced, and the cultural shifts we've inspired around how society approaches healthcare accessibility and family support. The bridge pendant Maya still wore daily had become a symbol recognized by advocacy center staff and clients worldwide. Carmen had suggested creating bridge pins for all staff members and program graduates, representing the connections built between individual struggle and systematic change. During the Advocacy Center's 6th anniversary celebration, over 800 people gathered to share stories, celebrate progress, and plan for continued expansion. The event featured families from 43 states and 22 countries, all connected by their experiences with healthcare advocacy and systematic change. Maya's closing remarks captured the scope of their collective impact while honoring the personal journey that had started it all 6 years ago. Carmen and I were just trying to survive. Today, we're part of a global movement proving that love, determination, and systematic thinking can transform not just individual lives, but entire communities and systems of care. As the celebration concluded with participants sharing personal stories of transformation and hope, Maya stood with Carmen and Dr. Hartford, watching the continuation of a movement that had grown far beyond anything they could have envisioned. During those desperate early days, the girl who had once been prepared to sacrifice everything for her sister's medical care had become a woman whose work influenced healthcare policy on multiple continents. The child who had been ashamed of her neurological condition had become a young adult developing technologies to improve communication and advocacy for others. Facing similar challenges, the physician who had lost faith in meaningful connection had found a family and a mission that gave his life profound purpose. Their story continued unfolding, not as a narrative with neat conclusions, but as an ongoing demonstration that individual courage, systematic thinking, and unwavering commitment to caring for others could indeed bridge the gap between desperation and hope, between individual struggle and collective transformation, between the world as it was and the world as it could become. In the end, they had built not just a bridge between their personal past and present, but a pathway for countless others to cross from crisis to advocacy, from survival to service, from isolation to community. The bridge continued extending, carrying new travelers toward destinations not yet imagined, but certainly filled with the same fierce love and determination that had made the first crossing possible. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.